YouTube, what's good, family? It's MasoMoney back with another video. So they're saying that this guy is the Michael Myers of Memphis. And to be honest with you, as I look him dead in the eyes, he did it. I don't know what they saying he did yet, but that guy did it, man. Keep me away from the Michael Myers of Memphis, all right? We about to get straight into this video. We got to see what's going on, all right?
Known for its rich musical heritage, barbecue, and soul. But in the span of just 7 months between 2019 and 2020, the city would be terrorized by a series of brutal murders that would shock even seasoned law enforcement officials.
Around
The
COVID
perpetrator,
time?
a young man who would stand in court and proudly declare himself to be a serial killer, comparing himself to one of horror cinema's most notorious fictional villains. This is the story of Joshua Dotson, the self-proclaimed Michael Myers of Memphis. Not much is publicly known about Joshua Dotson's early life or upbringing in Memphis. What is known paints a troubling picture of a young man who had been on a violent trajectory from an early age. According to court records, Dotson had an extensive criminal background that dated back to when he was just 14 years old. The specifics of those early offenses remain unclear, but they would foreshadow the darkness that was to come. By the time Dotson reached his late teens and early 20s, he was known quite well to law enforcement in Memphis. He was 20 years old in June 2020 when he would be added to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's Most Wanted list. But by that point, the damage had already been done. The first murder that authorities would eventually link to Dotson occurred on November 17, 2019. 18-year-old Divian Parker was at the South Memphis Market, a convenience store located at 1430 Elvis Presley Boulevard. It's unclear what brought Parker to the market that day or whether he had any prior connection to Dotson. What is known is that at some point, gunshots rang out in the parking lot of the market. When police arrived at the scene, they found Parker with multiple gunshot wounds. Paramedics attempted to save his life, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The young man's life had been cut short in an act of senseless violence. At the time, investigators had no clear suspect and no apparent motive. The case would remain unsolved for months, with Parker's family left to wonder who had taken their loved one from them and why. As 2019 turned into 2020, Memphis continued on, unaware that the person responsible for Parker's death was still walking free and that more violence was yet to come. 6 months would pass before Dotson would strike again. On May 24, 2020, another shooting would rock South Memphis, this time near Jesse Turner Park on South Bellevue. The victims were Renita Bennett and Reginald Anderson, two individuals who, like Parker before them, would find themselves in Dotson's crosshairs. Dotson approached Bennett and Anderson near the park while armed with a gun. The confrontation escalated quickly. Anderson, sensing the danger, attempted to flee. However, Dotson continued firing at him as he ran. Anderson fell to the ground, fatally wounded. Bennett was also shot multiple times during the attack and would also succumb to her injuries. The shooting near Jesse Turner Park sent shockwaves through the community. 2 people had been gunned down, and once again the perpetrator had seemingly vanished. Police began their investigation, but Dotson remained free, moving through Memphis as if nothing had happened. Just a little over 2 weeks later, Dotson would commit what would become his most high-profile murder, one that would ultimately lead to his capture and expose the full extent of his crimes. Jameisha Kovson was 19 years old and nearly 6 months pregnant in June 2020. She was in a relationship with Joshua Dotson, though the exact nature and duration of their relationship remains unclear from public records. What is clear is that by June 12, 2020, the relationship had become volatile and dangerous. Kovson lived in a home in the 1200 block of Quinn Avenue in South Memphis, near the intersection of Bellevue Boulevard and South Parkway East. It was there, on June 12th, that an argument would erupt between her and Dotson. According to investigators, the dispute began over a Facebook post and Kovson's pregnancy. The argument grew heated, and at some point, Kovson went into a room and closed the door, attempting to put space between herself and Dotson. But instead of leaving or attempting to de-escalate the situation, Dotson responded with violence. He fired a shot through the closed door.
Wow,
The bullet didn't hit Kovson, but it was clear that Dotson's intent had turned lethal. He then forced his way into the room and continued arguing with her. Eventually, he left the residence, and for a brief moment, it may have seemed like the worst had passed. Just a few hours later, Dotson would return to Kovson's home, and he entered, opening fire and unfortunately fatally wounding Kovson. By the time police received the 911 call, it was too late. Officers arrived at the Quinn Avenue residence to find Kovson with several gunshot wounds. She was rushed to the hospital, but neither she nor her unborn child could be saved. Both were pronounced dead shortly after arrival.
Bro, that is insane, bro. This dude is sick. I don't even know how females could even talk to people who is this crazy. Like, you can't tell a nigga this crazy. On top of that, you can't blame her. But, bro, this man has no conflict resolution skills. No, he don't even got no emotions, to be honest with you. Bro, he gets in arguments for these last 4 murders that we done heard about. He gets in arguments with people, and if he get mad enough, you just dead. Like, what, bro? This nigga's crazy.
Morbidly enough, just 2 hours after killing both Kovson and her unborn child, Dotson would post a memorial on his Facebook page, simply writing the words "Fly High." Clearly, he had wanted to make it seem like he was a grieving boyfriend rather than the actual perpetrator. Of course, police were able to see through this, and Dotson became their prime suspect. Alongside witness testimony and evidence against him, it seemed like they had a cut-and-dry case. However, Dotson would once again go into hiding. A few days after Kovson's murder, Dotson posted a Facebook Live video. In it, he denied any involvement in her death and claimed he was planning to turn himself in. In the video, he would proclaim that the police were lying and that Kovson had simply gotten caught up in a life of danger and that he didn't do it. For quite some time, Dotson would remain on the run, even as investigators began connecting him to additional murders. By June 17, 2020, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation had added Dotson to their most wanted list. The charges were stacking up. 4 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder, and 2 counts of employment of a firearm during the commission of a felony. A reward of up to $13,500 was offered for information leading to his capture. The TBI warned that Dotson was considered armed and extremely dangerous. A massive manhunt was underway, 100%. With multiple law enforcement agencies working to track him down. 6 days after killing Kovson, on June 18, 2020, Dotson's time on the run came to an end. The U.S. Marshals Gulf Coast Regional Fugitive Task Force, working in conjunction with local law enforcement, tracked him to the Nashville area, and he was taken into custody without incident. Dotson was transported back to Memphis to face justice. He was indicted on October 14, 2020, by a grand jury on 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Jamisha Kovson and her unborn child. Prosecutors also began building cases against him for the murders of Divian Parker, Renita Bennett, and Reginald Anderson. As Dotson sat in jail awaiting trial, his behavior became increasingly concerning. According to Judge Carolyn Addison, who would later preside over his sentencing, Dotson exhibited criminal and sadistic behaviors while incarcerated. He was involved in incidents with shanks and ice picks, engaged in inappropriate conduct, and displayed assaultive behavior toward jail staff. Judge Addison would later state that in 20 years of practice, she'd never seen anything as thorough and detailed as the documentation of Dotson's violent conduct behind bars. The trial for the murders of Jamisha Kovson and her unborn child began in August 2024, more than 4 years after the killings. The prosecution presented a strong case, with at least 10 witnesses providing crucial testimony. The evidence against Dotson was overwhelming. Witness statements, physical evidence, social media posts, and more. But what would make this trial truly shocking was Dotson's decision to testify in his own defense. Taking the witness stand is always a risky move for a defendant in a criminal trial, but Dotson seemed unconcerned about the risks. In fact, he appeared to relish the opportunity to speak. Rather than proclaim his innocence or express remorse, though, Dotson made a chilling confession. He he admitted to murdering Jamisha Kovson and her unborn child. But he didn't stop there. He also confessed to 3 additional murders: the killings of Divian Parker in November 2019 and Renita Bennett and Reginald Anderson in May 2020. And then, Dotson, speaking directly to the court, declared that he was Michael Myers. This was a reference to the fictional serial killer from the Halloween horror movie franchise, a masked murderer who stalks and kills his victims with cold, emotionless brutality. Dotson clearly wanted to garner attention for his actions and seemed to take pride in the horrors that he had inflicted on the city of Memphis.
So all he could say after killing 4 people was, "Yeah, I'm Michael Myers, girl." Like, what this nigga? Bro, what?
Testimony, Dotson showed no remorse. He referred to himself repeatedly as a serial killer. In an attempt to justify his actions, he claimed that he killed Kovson because she knew about his previous murders and he feared she would inform police. In court, he would also refer to Kovson as basically a prostitute in some sick attempt to smear her character. Judge Carolyn Addison, who observed Dotson throughout the trial, noted that not only did he fail to show any remorse during his testimony, but she caught him sleeping several times during the proceedings. It wouldn't take very long for the jury to deliberate and reach a verdict. They took only 45 minutes and determined that Dotson was guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder. On October...
They say don't judge a book by a cover. I would have given that nigga life the moment I seen him in the jury, for real.
31st, 2024, Joshua Dotson appeared in court for sentencing. Of course, the date itself was certainly a unique choice, seeing as October 31st is Halloween.
Wow.
The prosecution asked Judge Addison to impose 2 consecutive sentences of 51 years each, totaling 102 years in prison. Dotson's defense attorney, Uni Ganguly, argued for concurrent sentences, which would have allowed the 2 51-year terms to run simultaneously, effectively cutting his time in half. But Judge Addison was unmoved by the defense's arguments. In her remarks, she made it clear that she had considered not just the crimes themselves, but also Dotson's extensive criminal history dating back to age 14, his complete lack of remorse, his behavior during trial, and his conduct while incarcerated. The judge would also state that Dotson had wreaked havoc on the community and that he admitted to being a serial killer, and seeing as he called himself Michael Myers, that meant that he was a danger to society. Judge Addison sided with the prosecution and sentenced Dotson to 2 consecutive 51-year terms, totaling 102 years in prison. At the time...
That's amazing. That's exactly what he needed, too. Let me know what y'all think about the Michael Myers of Memphis. So we ain't even gonna say his real name. He don't deserve none of that, man. This dude is a sicko, a loser, a creep. Hold on, he never getting out, right? I gotta keep talking bad, but that nigga kill me. I gotta make sure I don't run no nigga like that. This nigga is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, keep him far away from all of us watching this video, family. Like, I keep y'all in my prayers, man. Y'all my family. We can't run into nobody like this in this lifetime. You know, I make some money. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next video. I'm out.